Welcome back to DJ Call Play Legacy. Today we have Josh on Sultai control and David on Infect. For Josh's opening hand, we have a Thoughtseize, Baleful Strix, 2 Brainstorm, an Abrupt Decay, Polluted Delta, and a Wasteland. Looking at David's opening hand, we have 2 Glistener Elf, a Blighted Agent, Daze, Force of Will, Ponder, and a Tropical Island. Starting off with Josh on the play, he'll play a Polluted Delta and pass the turn. David will untap and draw. He'll play Tropical Island and cast a Glistener Elf and pass the turn. Josh will crack the Polluted Delta. Fetching up an Underground Sea. He's going to go ahead and cast a Brainstorm. David's going to go ahead and cast the Daze for its alternate casting cost, returning the island to his hand. Josh will go ahead and play his Wasteland and pass. David's going to go ahead and go to combat and attack for 1 Infect. David's going to go ahead and play the Tropical Island and pass the turn. And in response to Josh activating the Wasteland, he's going to go ahead and cast a Crop Rotation. David's just going to go ahead and get a Verdant Catacombs. Josh will start off with playing a Tropical Island and cast the Baleful Strix. ETB, he will draw a card and pass turn from there. David's going to start off by cracking the verdant catacombs. And grab another tropical island. And he's going to go ahead and cast that Ponder. David's going to go ahead and shuffle it up and get that fresh draw. David will move to combat and attack with the Glistener Elf. Joshua will block with the Baleful Strix, and they will trade. And pass turn from there. Josh is going to go ahead and start off with a Thoughtseize targeting David. That will resolve. David will reveal 2 Glistener Elf, 1 Blighted Agent, a Vines of Vastwood, Force of Will, and a Royal Treatment. Josh is going to go ahead and take the Vines of Vastwood. And follow up with the Wasteland on that tropical island. And pass the turn from there. With no land, David's going to go ahead and pass the turn. Josh is going to go ahead and play a Misty Rainforest and cast a Sylvan Library. To which David's going to go ahead and cash in that Force of Will Josh knows about, exiling that Blighted Agent. David's going to go ahead and play a Pendelhaven. And Island Cycle the Lorien Revealed. After debating whether or not he should just cast the Glistener Elf or do the Island Cycling, he's going to go ahead and resolve the Island Cycling, getting a tropical island. And pass the turn. Josh is going to start off with a Brainstorm. Get that resolved. Josh is then going to go ahead and crack the Misty Rainforest. And grab a tropical island. He'll then play a Bayou per turn and cast an Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. So he'll draw a card, gain 3 life, and put a land from his hand into play. No land off the Uro trigger, he'll pass turn from there. Oh, David's gonna go ahead and play the Bajuka Bog he drew this turn, targeting Josh, getting rid of his graveyard, notably the Uro. He will then play a Glistener Elf and pass the turn from there. Josh is going to go ahead and cast an Orcish Bowmasters. With that resolve, the ETB trigger on the stack, he will target the Glistener Elf. The ability resolved, and the Glistener Elf is dead. David's going to go ahead and play a Tropical Island and cast the Glistener Elf. Passing the turn to Josh. EOT, Josh is going to vibe check that Royal Treatment in David's hand. It is a new card from Wilds of Eldraine, so for a single green instant, target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn, and create a Royal token attached to that creature, giving the enchanted creature +1/+1 and ward 1. Start off with a Verdant Catacombs. And cast a Ponder. Liking what he saw, he'll put the 3 back and take the draw. And follow it up with an Abrupt Decay on the Elf. David's going to go ahead and use the Vines of Vastwood in his hand, and giving it hexproof. Josh is going to go ahead and attack for 1 with the Orcish Bowmasters, and pass it to David. David will untap draw, and start off with an attack for 1 with the Glistener Elf. For damage, he will activate the Pendelhaven, giving Josh the 2 Infect. Second main, he'll play an Inkmoth Nexus and pass the turn. Josh will go ahead and untap and draw. And move to combat, attacking with both the token and the Orcish Bowmasters. Second main phase, he's going to go ahead and cast a Grist, the Hunger Tide. With that resolved, Josh is going to go ahead and minus the Grist, of which he'll sacrifice a creature and then destroy target creature or planeswalker, targeting the Glistener Elf. He will then pass the turn. David will go ahead and untap draw. He will then start his turn by activating the Inkmoth Nexus and moving to combat. It looks like he's going to be attacking Josh. Josh will declare no blocks. David will then activate the Pendelhaven. Going to damage, Josh will take an additional 2 Infect. From there, David will pass the turn. At David's end step, Josh is going to go ahead and crack the Verdant Catacombs. Getting an Underground Sea. You'll then untap and draw. And start off with a Ponder. You'll go ahead and keep those cards on top and take a draw. And then he'll follow it up with activating the Grist. So he will mill a card and create an insect token. And if the card he milled was another insect, he can repeat that action. Moving to combat, Josh will attack with the Orcish Bowmasters. Moving to the second main phase, Josh will cast a Baleful Strix. That will resolve. The ETB goes through, Josh will draw a card, and he'll pass. David will untap and draw. He'll spend the 2 mana for a Blighted Agent. That will resolve. David will pass priority, which Josh will Fatal Push the Blighted Agent. David will respond by giving the Blighted Agent that royal treatment. That being resolved, the Blighted Agent will get hexproof until end of turn, nullifying the Fatal Push. And without a roll token on hand, they're going to go ahead and use Royal Treatment as the placeholder for that effect. David will go ahead and pass a turn. Josh will untap and draw. And he'll go ahead and activate the Grist, of which he'll sacrifice the Infect token to destroy the Blighted Agent, paying the 1 mana for the ward. He will then move to combat and attack with the Orcish Bowmasters. From there, he will pass. David will untap draw. And fire off a Glistener Elf and pass. Josh is starting the turn with a Polluted Delta. And it looks like he's going to go ahead and pass the turn. David will untap and draw. David will start his turn with activating the Inkmoth Nexus and move to combat. Moving to blocks, Josh will put the Baleful Strix in front of the Inkmoth. And before damage, David's going to cast the Invigorate. Josh will hardcast a Force of Will on that Invigorate. That will go through. Go to damage. Josh will take 1 additional Infect. The other 2 creatures will trade. David will go to second main phase and play a follow-up Inkmoth Nexus. Starting off his turn, Josh will go ahead and add his upkeep, sacrifice the Polluted Delta. He'll go ahead and search his library and grab a Bayou. He will then draw, and begin his first main phase by casting a Baleful Strix. ETB, he'll draw a card, and play a Verdant Catacombs. He'll go ahead and pass the turn. David will draw. And in his main phase, he'll activate the Inkmoth Nexus, move to combat. Josh will go ahead and block the Inkmoth with his Baleful Strix. They will trade. Josh will take an additional Infect. David will pass turn from there. Josh will untap and draw. Move into combat, attacking 1 with the Orcish Bowmasters. In Josh's second main phase, he will go ahead and cast a Sheoldred's Edict, targeting David, making him sack a non-token creature. David will untap draw, and pass a turn. Josh will untap draw, move to combat, and attack for 1 with the Orcish Bowmaster. Passing priority from there, David's going to go ahead and at Josh's end step, cast a Crop Rotation, sacrificing the Bojuka Bog, and getting an Inkmoth Nexus. He will untap and draw. He will activate the Inkmoth, go to combat, swing for 1, and take that 1 Infect. He will then pass a turn. Josh will untap and draw. Combat, attack for 1. Second main, he'll go ahead and cast a Leovold, Emissary of Trest. That will resolve. He will then play another Verdant Catacombs and pass the turn. David will untap draw. He'll go ahead and activate the Inkmoth Nexus, swinging for 1. For damage, he will activate the Pendelhaven, targeting the Inkmoth. Josh, now realizing he's dead to the Infect damage, concedes the game from there. Moving on to sideboards, Josh is going to be taking out a Jace the Mind Sculptor, Unearth, Sylvan Library, and bringing in 2 Plague Engineer and a Flusterstorm. David is going to be taking out 3 Days, 1 Force of Will, 1 Berserk, 1 Caracas, 1 Lorien Revealed, bringing in 3 Veil of Summer, a Savannah, 2 Swords to Plowshares, and a Beseiju Who Endures. Starting off game 2, Josh will be on the play. Looks like he's going to be keeping a Thoughtseize, 2 Orcish Bowmasters, a Force of Will, Baleful Strix, Verdant Catacombs, and a Tropical Island, of which he's putting 1 of those Bowmasters to the bottom. David on the draw for game 2. He has a hand that he's mulliganed down to 5, containing Glistener Elf, Brainstorm, Blighted Agent, Crop Rotation, Force of Will, Vines of Vastwood, and Besage Who Endures, scrying the Elf and the Vines of Vastwood to the bottom of his library. Alrighty, starting off game 2, we have Josh leading with a Verdant Catacombs. He's gonna crack it and fetch down to 19, and he's gonna cast a Thoughtseize. David revealing his hand. Josh is going to go ahead and take the Brainstorm. Pass on turn, David will untap draw. Play a Besage and pass turn. Josh is starting off his turn with a Tropical Island and will cast a Baleful Strix. That will resolve. ETB, he'll draw a card. He'll pass turn from there. David's going to play the Glistener Elf. Josh will untap and draw. Play a Wasteland and activate it targeting the Besage. He'll then follow it up by casting an Orcish Bowmaster. In response, David's going to cast a Force of Will, pitching a Brainstorm. Josh will cast a Force of Will, pitching a Force of Will in response. So that'll go through. Orcish Bowmasters resolves, and it'll ETB trigger, target the Glistener Elf. Josh will then attack for 1. And pass the turn. Josh will untap and just move to combat. Second main, he'll play a Misty Rainforest and pass. David will go ahead and scoop the game up from there. Moving on for sideboarding for game 3, Josh is going to keep the same plan. David, however, is going to be taking out the 2 Vines of Vastwood, Force of Will, Daze, Berserk, Caracas, and Lauren revealed, bringing in 3 Veil of Summer, 1 Savannah, 2 Swords to Plowshares, a Besage Who Endures, and 2 Days. Josh is going to be keeping a hand here, including Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, Orcish Bowmasters, Baleful Strix, Ponder, 2 Verdant Catacombs, and an Island. David on the play, he's going to be keeping a hand including Glistener Elf, Daze, Royal Treatment, Veil of Summer, Swords to Plowshares, Misty Rainforest, and a Pendelhaven. Alrighty, starting here with David on the play, he's going to play a Misty Rainforest and crack it down to 19. Grabbing a Tropical Island and playing a Glistener Elf, and he will pass the turn from there. Josh will start off his turn here by playing a Verdant Catacombs, and he will crack it down to 19. Getting an Underground Sea. he will cast a Ponder. Josh is going to keep all 3 cards on top and draw a card. And pass the turn from there. David will untap and draw. Play a Pendelhaven. He's going to move to combat, attack for 1, and then activate the Pendelhaven. Josh will get 2 Infect counters. David will pass turn. Josh will untap and draw. Play a Verdant Catacombs. And cast a Thoughtseize. In response, David's going to cast a Veil of Summer. In response, Josh is going to crack his Verdant Catacombs. David will pass priority on the fetch land. Josh will get a Underground Sea. And with the Veil of Summer on the stack, Josh will cast a Fatal Push, targeting the Glistener Elf. Of which David will go ahead and cast Daze, returning the Tropical Island to his hand, countering the Fatal Push. The Veil of Summer will effectively counter the Thoughtseize, and David will also draw a card. Josh will go ahead and pass the turn from there. David will untap and draw. Replay that Tropical Island. Move to combat. Attack with the Glistener Elf and activate the Pendelhaven. Josh will gain 2 more Infect counters. David will then pass the turn. Josh will untap and draw. Josh will play the island. Pay 2 and cast an Orcish Bowmasters. Bowmaster resolves. ETB. The trigger will target the Glistener Elf. That will go through and the Glistener Elf will die. Josh will pass a turn. David will untap and draw. He will play an Inkmoth Nexus and cast a Blighted Agent. That will resolve. David will pass a turn. Josh will untap and draw. He'll play a forest per turn. Pay 3 for an Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. So he'll draw a card, gain 3 life, and can put a land from his hand into play, which he will put a tropical island in. He will then pay 2 mana for a Baleful Strix. That will resolve. ETB, he'll draw a card. And Josh will pass a turn. David will untap and draw. David's going to start off with a Noble Hierarch. He'll move to combat, attack with the Blighted Agent, gaining the Exalted trigger off the Noble Hierarch, of which then David will go ahead and cast an Invigorate. In response, Josh is going to go ahead and cast a Force of Will, exiling a Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Spells resolve, damage going through. Josh will gain 2 more Infect counters. David's going to go ahead and pass the turn. Josh will untap and draw. Josh is going to move to combat and attack with the Bowmasters and the Orc token. No blocks, Dave will go to 17. Second main, Josh is going to go ahead and escape the Uro, leaving the Ponder in his graveyard. So he will draw a card, gain 3 life, put a land from his hand into play, which will be a Bayou. Josh will then pass the turn. David will untap and draw. David's going to go to combat. He'll activate Pendelhaven, targeting the Blighted Agent, and attack with the Blighted Agent as well, gaining the Exalted trigger off the Noble Hierarch. No more actions here. Josh will gain 3 more Infect, totaling 9. David will go ahead and pass the turn from there. Josh will untap and draw. And move straight to combat, attacking with all his creatures except for the Baleful Strix. Attack trigger off the Uro. Josh will gain 3 life, draw a card, and can put a land from his hand into play, which will be a Polluted Delta. David will not block, so he'll go down to 8. Second main, Josh will cast a Baleful Strix. That will resolve, so he'll draw a card. He'll then cast in Orcish Bowmasters. That will resolve. ETB trigger. Josh will target the Blighted Agent, of which in response to that trigger, David will cast a Royal Treatment. Looks like in response to the Royal Treatment, Josh is going to cast a Flusterstorm. That will all resolve, meaning that David will lose the Blighted Agent. Josh will pass turn from there. David will untap and draw. David's going to go ahead and pass the turn from there. Josh will untap and add his upkeep. He will crack the Polluted Delta. Grab a Tropical Island. He will then draw a card. He'll start his turn off with a Ponder. He'll keep the 3 cards on top and draw a card. Josh is going to go ahead and move to combat. He'll declare that he'll attack with the 3 orcs, the Uro, and the Baleful Strix, of which he'll resolve the trigger off the Uro. So he'll draw a card, gain 3 life, and put a land from his hand into play. David will go ahead and chump block the Uro with the Noble Hierarch. And in blocks, David will tap the Noble Hierarch for a white mana, 2 swords to Plowshares the Baleful Strix. In response, Josh is going to cast Assassin's Trophy, targeting the Inkmoth Nexus. To which David will respond by casting a Force of Will, pitching a Ponder from his hand. Force of Will resolve, countering the Assassin's Trophy. Swords will go through, exiling the Baleful Strix. Damage will go through. David will take 5 down to 2. Josh will pass the turn from there. David will untap and draw. David will activate the Inkmoth Nexus and go to combat. In response, Josh will cast an Endurance. As a blocker, David will go ahead and concede the game from there. And once again, thank you for watching, and be sure to like the video and subscribe.